and it's a bit. Okay, we are live, and I've got the wrong brand up. So good morning. We've had such a beautiful morning talking since Laurelle came. There we go. There's the right. My name's Jo Baldwin Trott. I am the one of the hosts of the Global Goddess Summit. The summit will be on next Monday, the International Women's Day of 2021. I was reflecting back to International Women's Day 2020, and what a year of difference, just incredible, from March the 8th one year to March the 8th the next. So I am very thrilled in participation and excitement for our event to have the amazing Laurelle Rond, who has been in my life for many, many years now, was obviously been in it before in previous lives. Laurelle Rond coming to us from the Lincolnshire wards, is that right?
Yeah.
Just recently moved there, thank you. And we've got Jen McCarty, who is just literally down the road from me in home. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's really lovely to have these conversations around the whole topic of goddess, and we've already warmed up this morning, Laurelle and I. And Jen, you've just published this amazing book, which I am drinking in. It's just so beautiful. Have you got it there? Can you?
Yeah.
Twin Flames and the Event. It's beautifully written. You just kind of absorb yourself in it, and before you know it, sort of 2 hours have passed. It's such a joy. Brilliant. Thank you. And that's available on Amazon.
Yeah.
And Laurelle is also an author. She has written a novel that's coming out one day. She's also featured in the Women Leading book, which I published and I've written in as well. And it's one of the authors in the Being Fine book, which is just coming out for men's mental health. So let's talk about, we'll come on to the event in a bit, but let's talk about the whole topic of goddess, and what does goddess mean to you both, and what do you feel is happening right now? And I know that's a very big question. Let's start with Jen.
So a goddess to me is it's like every time that we're born with a seed of divinity within us, and then depending on the choices that we make and the environment that we live in, and the teachers and the relationships that we have, then that seed then transforms to be the fruit of the divine self. So I see that the feminine aspect is the goddess, the fruit of the divine self is the goddess, and the fruit of the divine masculine aspect is the god. So it's our potential. It's like the Christ self, the divine self, the God self. Many names for it, but it's one. And so I believe it exists in all of us, and we need to take responsibility for our egoic consciousness, because that is what's primarily bringing us away from that remembrance through being addicted to the idea of separation and victimhood. And so if we adhere to those thought forms, then we do not cultivate that seed to become the fruit of the Christ itself. It just remains in its very, very hard kernel form. And so how we transform to become the divine self is by leaning towards thoughts of gratitude, leaning towards counting our blessings, having a practice that brings us to the present moment, realizing that the Christ consciousness party, the 5D party, is always happening in the present moment. And that is the goal of every soul. You think you're searching for a twin flame, you think you're searching for a guru, but really you're searching for the present moment. You're searching for that sense of being deeply aligned and home within the present moment. And so as we cultivate these practices, I mean, I talk a lot about this in my book, that essentially we're like transmitters, we're like individualized transmitters, and we have to take responsibility for how we attune and how we adjust our consciousness. And if we don't take responsibility, our egoic consciousness is going to pull us into a very third dimensional separation narrative timeline. But if we do take responsibility for our consciousness and start directing it towards that which is positive and grateful, then we really take responsibility for who we are as individualized transmitters. And we start literally putting our hand on the knob, and we start shifting our vibration to come into alignment with the force that keeps all the stars in their places, the forces that turns a seed into egg, that turns a seed into a flower. There is a vibration of creation that is very blissful and high and benevolent, and it's really our duty to tune and adjust our frequency to come into alignment with that vibration of creation. So that's a goddess. It's like it's the seed of divinity. It's the potential of divinity that exists within you, and it's awaiting your cultivation. It's not just going to sit there and you have to actively engage in that process. And what was the other question, Jo?
I can't remember now. It doesn't matter. I'm just so absorbed in what you just said. I think that and that's what Laurelle and I were talking about before we came on. That it is within everyone, the God and the goddess. It's one. And we were talking about just before you jumped on that it's the language we get so hung up on, the word God. And I was saying, and from my own experience, I've struggled to find who God is, for 40 years of my life, let alone, what the hell does goddess mean then? Oh, excuse my phrase there. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we sadly work in a world of words, and what these words mean to us, what they've been trained into us, it really impacts, and that's another alignment that we have to create, isn't it, of what these words mean to us individually, rather than what it meant to from your vicar at your local church when you were a kid or whatever. Yeah. And so Laurelle, obviously, we're just before you come on, we're talking about twin flames because and also relationships and love within. I mean, what does goddess mean to you? How do you bring your goddess into your world?
Right, I think to connect with what Jen has just said, some energy, everything is energy. Quantum physics now tells us that. Energy is vibration, vibration is sound. And sometimes language just doesn't do it. There's a bigger area in the brain for sound, considerably bigger than there is for language. So sometimes we need art, we need music, we need creative forms to take us to these huge questions, because how can you even begin to comprehend infinity or everything or nothing or God or goddess or whatever label we decide to put on it? So with that in mind, life, I think, is a massive journey towards remembering who we are, so putting ourselves back together. That I've come up with a story which helps me, and that is that this energy, whatever we call it, was pure being, and it wanted to experience itself, which means it had to do something. So you get the being and the doing, and in order to experience itself, it had to divide. And we call this division the divine masculine and the divine feminine. But after that division, it divides and divides and divides. And so, as Jen has said, each of us has a spark of that in us. But just because I'm a woman doesn't mean to say I only have a spark of goddess. I have a spark of God too. So for me, finding my twin flame, first and foremost, has got to be finding my twin flame inside myself. I need to remember, put back together myself together with the God and the goddess inside me. Now, because I happen to be female in physical form, then culture tells me that's the part I need to concentrate on. But actually, when I look back through my life, because we are in, albeit the end probably of a patriarchal culture, culture's told me that I need to concentrate on the male part of me. And frankly, I do it badly. There's not a lot of God in me. So along with that, I have suppressed my goddessness as well, because the two have to be in balance with each other. So now, having just left a very long marriage and finding myself living on my own and absolutely loving it, I am at last seeing the two halves of my twin soul within myself. And I'm able to remember both of them equally, because I need both in order to be this transmitter, as again, Jen, you talk about. So does that make any sense at all?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, totally. And that's the alignment, I guess, Jen, is it? That's the alignment of us being, you know, we need that to be aligned. Or what when you say alignment's another big word, isn't it? What do you mean by that? What does that mean?
Talking to me?
Yeah, Jen, sorry, yeah.
Alignment means, to me, it means being in alignment with one's higher self, one's divine self. And so, you know, so you can be in alignment or you can be out of alignment. And if you're out of alignment, you can be in fearful thoughts, anxiety, worry. When you're in alignment, you feel really excited. You feel very much at one. You feel a sense of, I always get a sense of like my heart expanding. When I'm in alignment, my heart's always expanding with excitement. Whereas when I'm not in alignment, I feel like there's like an energy of constriction and a contraction energy. And so that is my kind of litmus test to see whether I am in alignment is how I'm feeling. So I have learned, and it's no mean feat, but I have learned to identify the voice and the vibration of my ego. And I know that my ego is not my amigo, and I know that it doesn't ever give up, and it's absolutely incessantly still wanting to, you know. But I have this ability to be able to discern thoughts of the ego and thoughts of from my higher self, and that is based upon how I feel. And I try to tell that to my son, because he's really struggling, or he's okay now, but he was really struggling with his ego and with fearful, paranoid thoughts. And I was just trying to explain to him that, you know, that is how I know it's from my ego. It makes me feel scared and it makes me feel constricted. But he's like, yeah, no, but what about, it's got a really important message for us, like, and I totally get that. Like, the ego really does sound like it has the most important message ever. So I just, you know, I try to transmit that to him and be an example of that. But that is what I would refer to as being in alignment. What about you, Jo? How do you see alignment?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's the feeling, and there's a completely different feeling. It's almost like you're a completely different being, because you are just being rather than the doing, and it comes to a central feeling. Yeah, like for me, it's heart and gut. It's like that whole area of me is completely warm, and just full of light, and that's where I am. That's it, actually. That's where I am. Because when we're in ego, we're up here. That's what it feels to me. It's the mind and the consciousness going, come on, let's do this, that. What about this? What about that? But when I'm fully aligned, I feel like I've lost the outer part of my body, and I'm just totally in my core. And it's almost like the rest is just doing its job. That's how it feels for me. Never thought about that before, but yeah. It's challenging, especially now. But you know, I know, Jen, your attraction, you know, that's very much part of your work as well. I've really realized that you know, that unless we're aligned, we could do all the other things we need to do to manifest. But without alignment, you're banging a silent drum, aren't you? That's kind of how I feel.
I see alignment as two glass plates. So you've got the glass plate that is you, and you've got the glass plate that is the universe. And if they're not in alignment, then the universe can be throwing out a million opportunities to you, but you won't receive them. When you then align, then you will receive everything. And the goddess is a lot about receiving. the goddess energy. So you could say the God energy is about giving and the goddess energy is about receiving. When we are not aligned, we cannot receive. And so we end up here because this is where our culture teaches us. School is all about here. And we spend, you know, by the age of 4, we've learned half of what we will ever learn. I mean, that's a huge amount. So if we only teach our children to be up here by the age of 4, to read, to do all these intellectual things, and then we never teach them how to drop down into the heart and drop down into the belly and to connect with the earth, because the earth is a goddess, is the mother goddess energy, then we can't manifest anything. So we may have this wonderful divine energy coming through here, but if it stops at this point, then all we can do is talk about it. We can't actually feel it. We can't embody it. It won't do anything. We won't manifest anything.
So we need to get it into the core, into the root. So it needs to come all the way down, doesn't it?
We're like trees. You know, we've got these glorious branches, but without the sap coming from the roots up into the trunk, into the branches, that tree will die. And that's goddess energy for me. That's all that stuff coming up through the roots, into our bodies, into our guts, into our heart. And then wonderful to come up here. The brain is a phenomenal tool. Thinking is a wonderful thing, but only when it's aligned with the heart and the gut as well. And that for me is the twin flame. That's the marriage of the divine energy, which in chakra terms happens in the third eye.
Yeah. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking, well, infertility is all, you know, it's hideous that so few people are actually fertile anymore. Why is that? And then suddenly when you think of the body and that disconnect with Mother Earth, then oh goodness me, I love these conversations.
Well, if you know, one of the things we've been talking about in the book Find the Other F Word is one of the authors, Jamie, is an Aboriginal man, and he talks about his journey through the discrimination of one culture into another one. But the Aboriginal peoples, indigenous peoples, they have this connection with the goddess. They have the connection with the earth, the respect, the treading lightly upon the earth, the gratitude, all these things, Jen, you talk about with high vibrations. If you live in gratitude and respect and love and curiosity and wowness, I mean, you know, here we are on this incredible piece of technology, looking at each other as though we're here. That may be a very brain function, but if we come from our heart, it is fantastic. You know, you look at a blade of grass, you look at the daffodils coming up, it is all amazing. That for me is goddess energy. The sheer phenomenalness, not that that's a word, but it can be now, of life. That's the goddess. And she's beautiful.
And she's within us all, isn't she? And I think, you know, again, there's this worry and fear of like, well, how can I have goddess in? And when I went to create the title of the summit, you know, it came in, it's got to be the goddess summit. I thought, I wonder how that's going to land with people. Is it going to be like a Marmite moment? You know, and obviously whoever is meant to be there will be there, whether that's 3 people or 93. But, you know, it just, it's fascinating, isn't it, that we're kind of all still so early on in our journey. And Jen, a lot of your work is to do with ascension. And I'd love to just, you know, mention that and talk about that, because I know both of you work as well. But because obviously we are evolving and women are evolving, I feel kind of quicker, but I know I'm a bit biased, but I feel like we are. What would you say about that?
About whether women are evolving? Yeah, I mean, I talk about that
with the current, you know, current situations. Obviously, we are changing. We are vibrating at different. We are moving dimensions.
Yeah, I talk about that quite a lot in my book, and in fact, the prologue opens with that conversation between the soul and God. And you know, for the most part, what I've been shown is that within these twin flame couplings that are preordained to manifest in this threshold lifetime, Great Awakening lifetime, as we all sit at the feet of Mother, Father, God, and we plan our lifetime and the synchronicities and the timeline of how we come into union with each other. And I think for the most part that a lot of the divine masculine polarity twin flames were very, very reluctant to return back to the third dimension shithole, basically, that it has really, really been. And I think a lot of the divine feminine, like I have a very clear, lucid memory of this conversation with God and my twin, and just saying, no, we're going. The earth needs us. You know, we need to be the awakened flame of truth on the earth plane. And the divine masculine is like, I don't think I'm going to be able to cope. Like, it's just going to be too difficult. And then the divine feminine says, don't worry, I'm going to have my connection with God. I'm going to have that really, really solid, and I will be your speaker. I will awaken within the dream, and I will awaken to the fact that I'm a multidimensional avatar being, and that I'm able to protect you spiritually whilst in this realm, and that we will be able to come back together based upon these phenomenal synchronicities that we are orchestrating, you know, at the feet of Mother, Father, God. So I think for the most part, it has been very, very challenging for the divine masculine. I think for the divine feminine, you know, we have a womb, which is a multi-dimensional portal, and so also I talk a lot about this in the tarot. So within the original tarot, the Rider-Waite tarot, you've got the zero representing the Fool, which is the 0 point field from which all souls are born. And then you have the divine masculine, which is the magician, and he holds his staff up to the air, and that is symbolic that he is a conduit of divine energy. He's a channel, he's a conduit of divine energy. And then the third card is the Empress, and she is the divine feminine who is sitting on her throne carrying the book of Gnosis, and that is Mother, Father, God has deemed the divine feminine less corruptible than the divine masculine, and so she holds the codes within her for her full remembrance of her divinity as a child of God, as an innocent daughter of God. And so it is through her purity and for the most part, generalizing, but for the most part, her purity and her heart connection, because we have a very, very strong heart connection because we're mothers. We need to have that. We need to have that psychic connection with our children. And so based upon that, it was deemed, the divine feminine was deemed less corruptible than the divine feminine to be the one to truly, truly remember. And I go into very, very great depths about this in my book, but this is connected to the Yeshua and the Magdalene divine union template. And what I was shown about that is that through her perception, through Magdalene's perception, through the fact that she had burnt her egoic consciousness in the flame of divine truth, it was through her perception that transformed the seed of the Christ in Yeshua to become the fruit of the Christ itself. She recognized him as he truly is, as an innocent son of God. And through her recognition, that was what triggered his ascension and his enlightenment. So, for the most part, I think it has been a lot easier for the divine feminine. Obviously, I'm generalizing. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, like, I do a lot of work with twin flames, and sometimes I'll be in a session with a client, and the man will be carrying the divine feminine polarity. So it is not about this male and female bodies. It's about the energy. It's about the polarized energy that you're carrying. So some of those men find it easier, and then then you've got a lot of women that take on patriarchy. Like I hear more patriarchal words and tones coming from women than I do from men. So there's a lot to discuss on that subject. I talk a huge amount about that in my book.
Yeah, and you've got a great YouTube channel that has got lots of amazing videos on there, which is really just, there's always so much. For like making notes, Jen. It's amazing how much you have, and you've got to talk. But you're right, and the whole again in the being fine. But so many of the men are actually just admitting that they are realizing they have a feminine and masculine side. Kapil Gupta, I'm going to invite him up on Monday actually, because that's his work. His work is all to allow men and women to feel the connect and feel the balance, because we have and I think that's really interesting. Coming out of hello, good morning, coming out of this time, there have been so many women working and creating the male persona, and I'd even include myself in that actually. That it's been a real struggle for me to bring in the goddess. Obviously, we're coming out of the just before we finish off, but we're coming out of this incredible year. And one thing I would love us to talk about, and I know there's going to be some healing from Laurelle, because Laurelle's a sound therapist, so it's going to do some healing and blessings. But we're going to sort of acknowledge the last year. It's just on a very, on a human level. So many women have been dealing, and I know you have, Jen, I have with my kids, with so much, haven't we? And it just feels like a time to actually acknowledge, because I would argue that most women have carried carried the situation and dealt with that energy on a slightly greater level, because we do tend to naturally nurture the children too. What do you feel, is that a fair? Do you agree with that, or what have been your observations over the last year with your friends?
Is that Jen or me you're asking?
Either.
Well, I would say actually that whilst my children are grown up, it's been a massive year for needing to support them. And interestingly, they have been able to support me in return. So it's been really rather a beautiful dance. And when we allow someone to support us and we receive that does something magical. That's a kind of alchemy all in itself. So this whole parenthood, motherhood thing has come up into our consciousness in a way it possibly hasn't done before. And I think that's what the whole pandemic thing's been about, is bringing stuff up for us to look at. And ultimately, as human beings, we have this remarkable thing, choice. We have free will. And we can, when we see something, we can say yes or no to it. And it may appear at times that abscesses are bursting all over the place. I mean, the fear abscess has been huge. Yeah. In fact, in me personally, it was extraordinary. On the day that my marriage broke, one of my front teeth died. And symbolically, it was the fear tooth, and this massive abscess came at the top of it. So it really was a question of all the fear that I had held in my life suddenly was going bang. You got to look at this stuff, and that brings you into union with who you really are, and you have to face the God and the goddess. And Jen, your work with Jeshua and Mary Magdalene, I think is so fundamentally important. Culturally, we have taken whole half of that out.
Yeah.
And that half is the one that actually creates the being. Yeah. As you say, turns the seed into a fruit. And we need to acknowledge this first in ourselves and then outwardly. And that for me is the goddess.
And that's what's been, vilified and distorted over the last 2,000 years, is specifically the roadmap home to our divinity. And it is through the sacred union. I mean, it's through our DNA, but such a huge part of that is through the roadmap of the sacred divine union, and the understanding and the respect for the divine feminine and the role that she really, really does play within that. But a lot of my work is really about helping the divine feminines to up level their vibration so that the masculine can surrender, because that is how the masculine 3D seed is transformed into the fruit of the multidimensionally awakened avatar God being, is through the awakened divine feminine, through the magnetism of the awakened divine feminine. And but the divine masculine can't surrender to an unawakened divine feminine. That is just ridiculous and stupid. And so really the divine feminine needs to do the work. She needs to read the book, and she needs to really get with the memo that who she's searching for is herself, and what she's actually searching for is the present moment, and is her alignment with the present moment, and it is not on anything external. Because if it was on something external, if that was to go, then do you really think your happiness and stability is based upon something that is external from you? That's not how our creator works. Our creator is a very beautiful and benevolent creator, and would only ever place the source of our happiness and stability within our own self and our own alignment. But it's really important now that the divine feminine, sweetens her nectar. And in fact, my next book's going to be called No More Crumbs, and it's a empowerment manual for the divine feminine, for her to really let go of all of this programming, this martyrdom programming, this kind of sacrificial programming that we've all inherited from our grandparents and our parents, to really have very vigilant boundaries and have a very solid relationship with self-love and loving one's wounded inner child aspect, which is also known as the shadow aspect. And I'm going to be sharing many tools to help women really come to that level whereby they will only attract their divine mate, and that anyone else just will not be attracted into their field, because they will have done the work to up level their vibration, so it's no more crumbs, like the divine feminine has truly settled for crumbs, like the odd text, the random smile, and I myself, I can totally identify with that, and that's how I can speak with expertise on that subject. But now is really the time for the divine feminine to realize who she truly is.
Is there time for me just to put in a little bit about mythology? Because mythology is fascinating in the light it shines on the goddess. And there's a Greek myth, Psyche and Eros, which shows how, as you say in your Crumbs book, how to become a goddess. And part of her journey is that she has to shine. She marries the god Eros, who's the god of love, on the condition that she will not ask him any questions and that she will never look at his face. I think we can all relate to that one. And then one day, her sisters are very jealous of the fact she's living in paradise. So her sisters persuade her, and now she's pregnant, that her husband is a monster. And they say, you are going to give birth to a monster, to a baby fathered by a monster. You need to look at his face. You need to ask him the questions. So one night while he's lying beside her asleep, she lights a lamp and she looks at his face. And he is absolutely beautiful. But because she has broken her promise, he then leaves. He goes to live back with his mother, interestingly. But the point about this is that in order for a man to realize his godness, the female has to shine a light upon him. And he really doesn't want this. So he runs away. Nevertheless, the story goes on. She has tasks and she is made into a goddess as well. So it's really worth looking at mythology to understand the journey of the goddess and the god.
Yeah, I'd love to just say, because in a way, the divine masculine, when he surrenders to the awakened feminine, then that is the death of his ego. That is the death. And who wants to die? No one really. You know, it's not that much of an attractive option. But the thing is, that is what they're searching for. Like, I know with my twin flame, like, you know, and it always reminds me of that poem of Rumi, and you know, and it's about the journey of the river. All rivers are returning to the ocean, and the ocean is symbolic of the divine feminine, and the river is symbolic of the divine masculine, and ultimately all the rivers are heading towards the ocean. But the river knows that as soon as it hits the ocean, it's gone, it's dead. It has no individual identity anymore. It has become one with the ocean. And of course, that's what they want. Like, I know with my own twin, he so desperately wants to drink that nectar of oneness. Like, he's so deeply, everything about him, he's like addicted to searching for that. But he knows that I'm there, and he knows that I represent death. Like, I am his death. I am his ascension. And that is what ascension is. Ascension is the death of the third dimensional caterpillar river aspect of ourself into the fifth dimensional butterfly oceanic aspect of ourself. Like, that is the ascension process. And for the divine feminine, like, I had to go through that own death with myself, with God. That was just between me and God, that ego death. But for a lot of the divine masculines, it will be through the awakened feminine, you know. And but there's a huge amount of resistance to that, because, you know, because it is death. And I think it's really, really important that if you're watching this, if you're a divine masculine, like, just align with an awakened divine feminine, call in an awakened divine feminine, because she is the one that you are calling in on a very, very deep level. She is the one that will guide you to your oneness, to your perpetual and eternal remembrance of your divinity. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And hopefully, I think we've got our first male who's going to come, definitely. So that's amazing. Wouldn't that be incredible if, you know, we have men and women on Monday, and it's a real celebration. Yeah, I think that would be just amazing. Mary Magdalene is a whole topic that I would love to do another chat on, because, you know, so little is spoken about her, and that we have so little value of her. And she is someone that needs to feature in all our lives. But anyway, we'll finish there. But thank you so much for coming on this morning. It's been amazing talking. I know some people have been watching, which has been great. Jen and Laurelle will be two of our speakers on Monday's Global Goddess Summit. Hopefully that will give you a flavour for what they're going to be talking about. We are going to have segments from each of them first, and at the end we'll obviously have a lovely open discussion about all of this, which will be amazing. We also have Teresa Corso joining us from Melbourne, Australia. Kumu Brenda, who's one of the Hawaiian elders, will be giving us a lovely talk about the harmony within. You know, there's such common themes, but with different messages. And from the Hawaiian, you know, the way that aloha, everything about Hawaii is all about harmony, isn't it? And I'm just so excited to be part of this amazing event. So is there anything, last things you want to share with folks about what you're going to be doing Monday?
I'm going to be, as I said at the beginning, there's more of the brain devoted to sound than language, so much of mine will be musical.
Fantastic. Yeah. Look forward to it. And you're going to play your harp?
I'm going to play my harp. I'm going to be a little angel with my wings fluttering.
You're always an angel, not just on Mondays.
I would just like to let everyone know that I'm going to be hosting a global ceremony today for the 3-3 numerological portal date. And it's going to be working with abundance codes. A lot of people in my community are still struggling with lack programs. And so we're going to be like really weeding out all of those residual lack programs and putting in, like, resettling those abundance codes. So this has been very much requested from my community. That's going to take place at 9 p.m. UK time. It's open to donation. So we can put the links to book, and I'll put this video up on my YouTube channel as well. So
Brilliant. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And on Monday, what are you going to talk about?
I don't know, whatever you'd like me to do, Jo. I mean, I can speak about twin flames, I can speak about ascension, and I can also sort of like help everyone prepare. I think that's quite a good one, how to prepare for your divine union. Yeah, maybe we'll focus on that, like what we can do to become the most attractive versions of ourselves.
I think that's a really beautiful message. And, you know, I don't know, have you looked at the demographics of people coming, but I think that's a really lovely message.
Yeah.
I know, and obviously Laurelle has just shared that a lot of women are reevaluating their relationships with the person they're physically with right now. And I know a lot of women are feeling and seeing that there's definitely more to what I deserve and should and be. So I think that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for coming. Jen, from just down the road, we're going to have a walk along the beach, aren't we? Hopefully soon.
Yeah, definitely. And my book's available to buy on Amazon, and it's really, really powerful. It's a very non-3D. It's a 5D manual. I see it as like a Lemurian ascension manual.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's phenomenally unique. It's beautiful. So Jen's a book, Jen McCarty. If you just Google that on Amazon, you can look her up. And obviously Laurelle and I are in the Being Fine book. Kind of a different message, but actually underneath it all, it's kind of the same. You know, it's all the same. It's just valuing who we are on a much deeper level than we have done. So we will look forward to seeing you on Monday. Tickets are available on Eventbrite. It starts at 9:30 Monday morning. The kids have gone back to school. No, I've enjoyed having my kids, but I must admit, I am quite ready for them to go back to school. So it will be 2 hours of bliss. You don't need to bring anything. You don't need to bring a pen and paper. You can just spend 2 hours basking in goddessness. How does that sound? Sounds good to me. I will look forward to seeing you then. Thank you, Laurelle. Thank you, Jen. Have a great
Thank you, Jo.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.